The atmosphere at Ellis Park was electric, the anticipation enormous, and the expectations sky-high. South African fans arrived believing they were about to witness another chapter in the Springboks' remarkable winning run, a streak that had stretched across nearly a year and included dominant victories over some of the biggest teams in world rugby. Instead, they watched a determined and tactically brilliant All Blacks side produce a statement performance that ended the Springboks' 12-match winning streak and left head coach Rassie Erasmus with plenty to reflect on. The final score of 33-16 told only part of the story. What made the result even more significant was the way New Zealand managed to neutralize many of the strengths that have become trademarks of this South African team. For years, the Springboks' famous bomb squad has been viewed as one of the most powerful weapons in international rugby. The strategy of unleashing fresh forwards late in matches has often overwhelmed opponents and helped South Africa dominate crucial moments. But at Ellis Park, things unfolded very differently. Speaking after the defeat, Rassie Erasmus admitted that several unexpected events disrupted South Africa's plans and forced his team into a series of adjustments that were never part of the original strategy. According to the Springboks coach, injuries played a major role in changing the flow of the match. One of the earliest setbacks came when Kurt-Lee Arendse failed a head injury assessment and was unable to continue. That immediately forced South Africa into reshuffling their backline. Andre Esterhuizen, who had been prepared to cover a role in the forward pack, suddenly had to move into midfield. As a result, Jesse Kriel shifted to the wing, altering the balance of the team and limiting some of the tactical options the Springboks had planned to use later in the game. Erasmus explained that these changes were nobody's fault and simply the result of injuries that occurred during the match. He emphasized that the coaching staff had prepared specific combinations and strategies, but those plans became increasingly difficult to execute as circumstances changed. The challenges continued when Cheslin Kolbe later suffered an injury, creating even more disruption. With the bench already configured in a particular way, South Africa had to make further adjustments. Cobus Renock moved into the scrum half role, while Grant Williams was shifted to the wing. The arrival of Mane Libbok also required positional changes elsewhere, leading to Sasha Feinberg-Mngomezulu moving to fullback. What looked on paper like a carefully constructed game plan gradually transformed into a series of adaptations as the Springboks attempted to cope with an increasingly complicated situation. Yet injuries were only part of the story. Perhaps the biggest turning point came around the hour mark when South Africa had an opportunity to reduce the deficit and potentially level the match. Rather than opting for a penalty kick at goal, the Springboks chose to attack through a scrum. It was a bold decision, one that reflected the confidence South Africa has traditionally had in its forward dominance. However, the gamble did not pay off. The Springboks were penalized at the set piece, handing possession back to New Zealand and missing a valuable chance to put pressure on the visitors. Moments later, the All Blacks punished them with a crucial score, swinging momentum firmly in their favor. From that point onward, the match increasingly moved away from the hosts. Further difficulties arrived when substitutes Marco van Staden and Cobus Renock both received yellow cards. Suddenly, South Africa found themselves attempting to compete against a world-class New Zealand side with only 13 players on the field. Erasmus acknowledged that this situation effectively ended any realistic hopes of a comeback. Playing without a scrum half and a flanker for significant periods is challenging against any international team, but against the All Blacks it becomes an even greater task. The Springboks were forced to defend, attack, and manage territory while severely undermanned, and New Zealand took full advantage of the opportunity. While the injuries and yellow cards were important factors, the most fascinating aspect of the match may have been the tactical battle that unfolded between the two teams. South Africa entered the game expecting a certain style of defense from New Zealand. Instead, the All Blacks delivered something different. According to both Erasmus and captain Pieter-Steph du Toit, New Zealand employed a highly effective strategy focused on stripping the ball in contact situations. Time and again, the Springboks found themselves losing possession in areas where they would normally expect to maintain control. These turnovers disrupted attacking momentum and prevented South Africa from converting pressure into points. Throughout the game, the Springboks enjoyed significant territory and possession, particularly during the opening stages. However, rugby matches are not won by statistics alone. What matters most is turning opportunities into points, and that is where New Zealand excelled. The All Blacks repeatedly found ways to stop South African attacks inside the critical areas of the field, whether through legal ball strips, pressure at the breakdown, or aggressive defensive work around the tackle contest. They consistently frustrated the home side. Erasmus openly praised this aspect of New Zealand's performance. He described their approach as clever, effective, and completely within the laws of the game. Rather than making excuses, the Springboks coach acknowledged that his team struggled to handle the pressure being applied by the visitors. The turnover count highlighted the problem. South Africa lost possession more than 20 times during the contest, an unusually high number for such an experienced international side. Many of those errors occurred in promising attacking positions, turning potential scoring opportunities into missed chances. Captain Pieter-Steph du Toit admitted that handling mistakes and critical errors inside the opposition 22 were among the biggest reasons for the defeat. He explained that the Springboks simply made too many mistakes and failed to execute when it mattered most. The veteran forward also pointed out that New Zealand performed better in several key areas and successfully forced South Africa out of their comfort zone. What stood out from both Erasmus and du Toit after the match was the honesty of their assessment. Neither attempted to blame conditions, officials, or bad luck. Instead, they recognized the quality of the All Blacks' performance and acknowledged that New Zealand had identified weaknesses that South Africa could not overcome on the day. Erasmus specifically highlighted the way the visitors disrupted attacking rhythm near the try line, stripped possession in dangerous areas, and pressured the Springboks into making uncharacteristic mistakes. It was a reminder that even the most successful teams in world rugby can be vulnerable when faced with an opponent capable of executing a well-prepared game plan. Despite the disappointment, there is little sense of panic within the Springbok camp. One defeat does not erase months of progress or diminish the achievements of a squad that has consistently performed at a high level. However, the result serves as a valuable lesson ahead of the next meeting between these two rugby giants. The Springboks now have clear areas to address. Ball security, decision-making under pressure, and execution inside the opposition 22 will all be major talking points during the week. The coaching staff will also review how injuries and tactical adjustments affected their structure and whether alternative solutions can be developed for future matches. For New Zealand, the victory represents more than just a win. It is evidence that they possess the tactical flexibility and mental strength required to challenge the world's best teams. By disrupting South Africa's strengths and forcing the Springboks into uncomfortable situations, the All Blacks delivered one of their most impressive performances in recent memory. As rugby fans look ahead to the next chapter of this famous rivalry, one thing is certain: the intensity has only increased. The Springboks will be determined to respond, while the All Blacks will arrive with renewed confidence after proving they can overcome the reigning world champions on their own turf. Ellis Park may have provided one result, but the story of this rivalry is far from over. In fact, after a night that exposed weaknesses, challenged reputations, and showcased elite-level rugby strategy, the next encounter promises to be even more fascinating. Both teams now know more about each other than they did before kickoff, and when two giants of the game meet again, the lessons learned from Johannesburg could prove decisive.